Hello, I'm Jackie Schertz, and welcome to Hey Listen. Today's program is our holiday special. We have some very talented performers with us today. We have Patrick Graybill, Brenda Schertz, who is my sister, coincidentally, and Simon Carmel. Today, we're not going to be focusing on any hot issues. We just want to enjoy the holiday spirit and put away all the serious, heavy topics. And please just sit back and enjoy our program. We'll be enjoying a variety of performances, so stay there and we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm very pleased to have with me Patrick Graybill. He's a many-faceted performer. He's an actor, director, teacher, translator, currently deacon at St. Mary's Church for the Deaf here in Rochester, and he teaches acting at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. He was also with the National Theater of the Deaf for 10 years. We're very pleased to have you with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. My first story that I'd like to tell is called Gift of the Magi. Was written by O. Henry. As the story opens, Della, this is her name, Della, is counting her money. She's counting it again and again. It's $1.87. That's all, $1.87. She counts it again and again, and it's mostly pennies. Maybe, just a few pennies that she's been able to get when she goes to the store to the butchers, maybe, or to the vegetable sellers, or to the market. She bargains with the shopkeeper in order to save just a penny or two and stores it away in her bank. I mean, to the point, her bargaining had reached the point where people thought she may be a miser. She was a bit embarrassed, but she continued to count her money. $1.87. She counted it again to make sure. $1.87. Just $1.87. The next day is Christmas. She wonders what she can do. There's a sofa there that's a little bit worn. Della runs to the sofa and cries. We leave this scene and draw away. We see a room in an apartment, an old apartment, decaying, not seedy yet, but on its way. The furniture that's in the room doesn't belong to Della. It's a rented room. $8 a week for this room. when you go down the stairs from the room, there's letter boxes. But there's no letters for Della and her family. There's a buzzer there, too, for the door, but it's never used. Della and her family don't have visitors. Jim and her husband and Della just don't have visitors. Now, you see, this story is set in the Depression years. First, Jim was making $30 before the Depression hit, but as the Depression went on, his pay went down to $30, from $30 to $20. And with $20 a week, there just wasn't much left for anything. They were barely getting by. Jim would come home nights, and Della was always the same. She was so excited to see him, would meet his eyes and go and hug him. She really loved him. The money just didn't matter. Their love was very strong. We go back to the scene with Della crying on the couch. She gets up and wipes her face, counts her money. It's $1.87. She looks out the window. There's snow out, and it just looks gray, the entire scene. There's a cat walking there on a fence, and it's gray. And the fence seems gray too. And as she looks at the scene, she thinks about $1.87. What can I do with $1.87? Tomorrow is Christmas. Can I get a gift for my husband with $1.87? What am I going to do? She looks back to the room and sees a mirror. Della approaches the mirror and looks at it and lets loose her hair, which has been bundled on her head. Della and Jim have two prized possessions. One is Jim's watch, a pocket watch. It's an old pocket watch handed down from his grandfather to his father to Jim, and he just cherishes this pocket watch. The other thing that Jim and Della cherish is Della's hair. It's beautiful and long. Della looks at it in the mirror, and it looked just like a waterfall cascading down her head and down her back. It was knee length. Della looks at her hair and realizes it's really beautiful. And a tear falls down her cheek. There's an old brown hat there. So she gathers up her hair and puts it under the old brown hat and looks at herself. And she takes her old brown coat and puts it on, descends the stairs, and goes out into the street. And hurries down the street and finds that store she was thinking about. The one with the storefront that says, Madam Sofroni's hair products. Madame Sofroni sells wigs and things like that. Della sighs and goes in and goes up to the second floor and meets the owner, Madame Sofroni. Madame Sofroni's a tall, big woman with a pale face and a mean facial expression. A tough-looking woman. And she says, "What do you want?" Della says, "Do you buy hair?" She says, "Yes, let me see yours." So Della pulls off the hat and lets the hair cascade down. Madame Sofroni examines it. It says $20. Della says, "Fine." So she has her hair cut, and the next 2 hours are just wonderful. Della's so excited, she runs from store to store and window shops and tries to imagine what she's going to buy for Jim. With $21.87 now, what can she buy? She looks from store to store and can't really decide what's best to give Jim. And she decides upon it. A silver watch fob. It's just perfect for the watch that he has. Jim, all along, has had this watch fob that's just made out of leather and sort of a little embarrassing. You know, it's old and it's right out in front. Everybody can see it and it just doesn't look very good. So Della can imagine how this silver watch fob is going to make it look great and how he'll feel proud to show his watch with his new fob on it. And she says, "How much?" And the man says, $21. And she says, "Fine, that's great. Please wrap it up." And she's so excited. She has 87 cents left. And that doesn't matter. She runs home and goes up to the second floor and looks at the watch fob, sets it on the table, and goes over to the curling irons and heats them up, turns on the gas and heats them up. And with her curling irons, sets small curls with her hair, which is now closely cropped. It takes 40 minutes for her to set the hair on her head. And now she almost looks like a schoolboy with all these tight curls on her head, and she's so excited. She goes and looks near the table. She goes and sits near the table and looks at the watch fob. She's already cooked dinner. It's already in the pot with a low flame. She's ready for Jim to come home. And she knows Jim will come home exactly at 7. He's never late. He's always punctual. It's almost 7, and Della's excited. She's waiting and watching the door with the watch fob there. It looks just so perfect. She notices the door handle's turning. And Della prays, "Please, God, help Jim look at me and see the same person, the same beauty, please." Her heart's racing. Jim turns the knob and opens the door and comes in, turns around and takes off his hat, and then looks up. Della's can't tell if he's not angry, he's not upset. He has this different facial expression, somehow special. She jumps up, runs over and hugs him, and she says, "It's Christmas. It's okay. It's Christmas. I cut off my hair and I sold it, but it's Christmas and I wanted to buy you a gift and I felt I had to, and I did it for you." And Jim said, "Your hair's gone?" And Della said, yes, it's gone. I sold it. And Jim looks around the apartment and says, "Your hair's gone? But it's okay. It's not here. I sold it. And with the money, I bought something special for you. I really love you." Jim looks at her and says, my expression, you'll understand in a few minutes. And he pulls out a small box. And Della's really excited. She opens it up quickly and tears all the paper away, and she's just thrilled. And then it comes to mind, and she understands, and she starts crying. Because in the box is a beautiful comb for her hair. 2 of them, one for the front and one for the side. She had saw them in the store a long time ago and really wanted them and loved them. And she knew they were really expensive. And they were beautiful. They were made out of tortoise shell. They were brown and shiny. And they had silver. It just looked like diamonds wrapped around it. And she said, "Don't be upset. My hair will grow back. It grows quick. It really does." And Jim looked at her and wondered he hadn't received the gift she had. So Della put down the combs and brought out the watch fob and said, "You see, isn't it beautiful? Isn't it a great watch fob? It's perfect for your watch." And Jim laughs. He goes and sits on the couch and puts his hand behind his head and says, "Nah. The gifts that we've given each other, we should put aside. In the future, we will use them, but not now. Go ahead and cook dinner. My watch has been sold. The money that I got from the watch was the money I used for your combs." And Della was taken aback, but they went ahead and finished cooking dinner and eating dinner. Now, the moral of this is the gift of the MAGI. If you remember the 3 wise men who came to visit Jesus as a baby, and they gave different gifts to him, and they were fancy, expensive gifts, but easily exchanged. They had money, they had riches, those rich people. But in some ways it seems stupid. I mean, these 2 people, Della and Jim, sold their possessions. It seems ridiculous that they would sell their possessions just to give one another gifts. But truly, their gift that they gave one another was love. The love that they had for each other. And that was proof that they are truly the wisest. My next story is something I'm sure you will love, and it's been around for many years. It's the night before Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled, all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to the objects below. When what to my wondering eye should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet an obstacle mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkle I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he has flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf. And I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, and then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
Oh, thank you, Patrick, for the beautiful tales.
My pleasure, thank you.
Okay, please stay with us. We'll be right back. Oh, that was a beautiful job. Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to more of our holiday special. I'm very honored to have Brenda Schertz with me today. She's here from Boston, where she's the artistic director of the Boston Theater for the Deaf. Recently, the BTD did 3 short plays, and Brenda has also played Sarah in the Harvard University production of Children of a Lesser God. She's now studying interior design. If you think you see a similarity here, it's because we happen to be sisters. So good luck.
The name of my story that I will be performing tonight is When Schlemiel Went to Warsaw. The story is written by Isaac Bashevis Singer. This is a Yiddish folk tale. It's been handed down through families. There was a man named Schlemiel. He lived in a town named Helm. Schlemiel was sort of a lazy type of person, actually. He didn't like to move much and tended to daydream. He always daydreamed of being able to travel the world, go to faraway places, other towns where mountains were, oceans and deserts. He told his wife that he wanted to do that. He said, "Dear, I would love to travel the world. I've been in this town all of my life." Mrs. Schlemiel said, "That is silly. Traveling the world is not for a Schlemiel. And who would take care of the children while I sell vegetables in the market?" Schlemiel was disappointed at her discouragement, but decided one morning, when his wife went to market, that he would tell the oldest children to not go to school. "Stay home, please, and watch your younger brothers and sisters." He made a little bit of food to bring on his trip, some bread, a little bit of garlic, and an onion. He packed it in a sack and tied it to his waist. He was so excited to get ready for his journey to Warsaw. He started his walk and passed several homes on his way. Someone came by, a friend of his, and said, "Where are you going?" "Well, I'm going to Warsaw." His friend asked him, "What's going on in Warsaw?" "Oh, nothing. I'm just going to Warsaw." He continued on his walk. There was the name of a street. It was called Warsaw Street. Schlemiel thought, well, that obviously leads to Warsaw, so he took that street. He went by towns and fields, farmers in the countryside. There were people plowing their fields. He continued his journey for miles and miles until he grew tired. He decided to take a nap. He'd rest on the side of the road for a while and continue his walk later. He found a perfect resting place, sat down, and was ready for a nap. He realized now if he fell asleep, he might not recall which way he was going and didn't want to get confused. So he set his shoes down on the ground with the toes pointing toward Warsaw and the heels pointing toward Helm. He fell into a nice sleep during his nap and dreamt. He dreamt about being a baker, making onion rolls with poppy seeds. He made many, many rolls, and people would come into his shop and say, "Could I buy some rolls?" Schlemiel would say no. People would say, "Well, then why are you making so many? Why are you baking them?" "I'm baking them for my family, for my children and wife." As he continued dreaming, there was a blacksmith on the other side of the road. He was working, and as he was working, he saw Schlemiel set his shoes in that particular way. He was quite a prankster and decided to go over after Schlemiel had been sound asleep. He decided to move the shoes in the opposite direction. He went back to his shop and started working again as if he had done nothing. He kept a watch on Schlemiel, though, and wanted to see his reaction. Schlemiel was still dreaming. He was in another dream now. He was the king of Helm. He sat with a crown and his throne, with his wife, his queen on his side, and his children, princes and princesses, playing. They were all eating onion rolls. They were delicious. They were covered with strawberry jam. Every year, people would not have to pay taxes. Instead, everyone would have to bring 1 jar of jam each family, so that his family could continue to enjoy the feast of onion rolls and jam. He woke up, and of course he was quite hungry after all these dreams, got out his sack and ate his roll. He put some garlic on the bread and continued to eat his roll. When he was finished eating, he got his cap on, noticed where his shoes were, the toes were pointing toward that particular direction, and headed off to Warsaw. His spirits were high as he continued his journey. As he was walking, he noticed that things seemed to be a little bit familiar. Unusually so. People in the streets seemed to be people he knew. The town was set up in the same particular way that his own town was set up. He stopped by and said, "What is the name of this town?" And the person said, "Well, this is Helm." Schlemiel didn't quite understand. That's completely impossible. He left Helm a little while ago, and I'm here in Helm again? No. Perhaps there's a Helm 1 and a Helm 2. Okay. That must be the answer. Well, he got to a street that looked like his home street. He decided, well, let me see if there's a home that looks exactly like mine. And sure enough, there was a home that looked exactly like Schlemiel's home. He didn't understand what could be happening. Schlemiel opened the door, and sure enough, the interior looked exactly like his home. There were chickens that looked exactly like his chickens. His wife, it had gotten night by that time, and his wife said, "Where have you been? Where have you been all day? Where did you go?" Schlemiel said, now, wait a minute, I'm not your husband. No, I'm not your father, children. Now, stop it. What is gone wrong with you? Are you mad? Schlemiel said, now, wait a minute. Do you know what has happened? You see, I left Helm. I went for a walk. I wanted to travel to Warsaw. And now I've gotten to this Helm, too. His wife said, Mrs. Schlemiel said, come on, this is just ridiculous. She sent her children to go get the healer. Gimpel. Please go get Gimpel so he can find out what is wrong with your father. Soon, people all around the town had heard about the situation that had been going on in Schlemiel's home. Schlemiel was astonished at how many people he recognized. They were all the same people. Different people in the town were all there, and one person said, come on, Schlemiel. This house is yours. This is your wife. These are your children. These are your friends. Schlemiel said, no. No, I left Helm 1, and now I have arrived at Helm 2. People started laughing and laughing in the crowd. They thought it was so funny. They decided to leave. Gimpel the healer finally arrived. He did not know what to do about this illness. His wife, Mrs. Schlemiel, said, what am I to do? A solution needs to be arrived at. Well, we'll have to cook dinner, and maybe after dinner we can figure out what's going on. Schlemiel thought, my wife would not feed a stranger. Schlemiel 2 is a little bit different than Schlemiel 1. She served up a dinner of beans. As he was eating that, people were looking at him. He said, isn't this interesting? To tell you the truth, I'm not your father. I live, in a town that's very similar to yours. I have a wife that looks very much like your mother. I have children that look very much like you. The children started to laugh. He continued to eat his dinner, and after it was all finished, he went to bed. His wife readied him a clean bed for him to sleep in. Schlemiel thanked her and went to bed. As he was sleeping, he dreamt again. He dreamt that he was the king of Helm, sitting at his throne with his crown and his queen. Now they were eating blintzes of all different flavors with different potatoes and cheeses and fruits inside. They had this great feast of many blintzes, and he hid some blintzes under his crown so that he could eat them later. After the dream, he awoke in the morning. And the house was full of the neighbors because the gossip had gotten around that there was a strange occurrence happening in the Schlemiel's family. There were so many people in the house, he was ready to yell at his wife. And he realized, but that isn't my wife. This is another person. I'm a stranger in this house. I almost forgot. The townspeople warned Mrs. Schlemiel, maybe your husband is a little bit mad, and I think it's a good idea that we should take him to the elders. They can have a forum and discuss what we must do about this problem. Mrs. Schlemiel said, yes, that is a good idea. Come on, Schlemiel. He got dressed to go to meet the elders. There was a particular building for this forum of elders. The head elder was Gronem the ox. He also had other elders that sat around him. There were 3 assistants that assisted Gronem: Ninny, Numbskull, and Dorkbrain. Schlemiel went to continue to explain to the elders what had happened, that he'd left Helm 1 to go to Warsaw, and between Warsaw and Helm 1 there is a Helm 2. The elders listened to the story, and Schlemiel received their information that they had to share with him. Gronem said, now, Schlemiel, you remember me, correct? Yes. Well, in my home of Helm 1, there is a Gronem the ox very similar to you, yes. And your wife? Schlemiel said, well, she's not my wife. She's very much similar to my wife, but she's not my wife. Gronem said, do you think that it's possible that as you were walking, maybe you turned around? Schlemiel said no, and explained the situation with his shoes, that he'd set them specifically so that he would know his way. During his nap, he'd gone to take a nap, and when he woke, he headed out in the direction of the toes. His wife exclaimed, what am I to do? Gronem thought that perhaps the other Schlemiel had left the same day that this Schlemiel had arrived. We need to wait for the other Schlemiel to come home and decide which one is the real Schlemiel. His wife said, no, I do not need 2 Schlemiels. 1 Schlemiel is plenty. Gronem said, now what we need to do is wait for this other Schlemiel to arrive. Now Schlemiel should live in a poorhouse for a while. Schlemiel said, a poorhouse? What am I to do there? Gronem said, now what do you do at home? The wife and children started to cry. They didn't know what to do. Mrs. Schlemiel said, now what am I to do if this Schlemiel goes to the poorhouse? Who is going to watch my children while I go to sell vegetables in the market? Gronem said, now I don't know what to do with this problem. Now, let me see, I do have an idea. And the 3 assistants said, what is going on? What is the idea? Gronem explained, Schlemiel, instead of living in the poorhouse, the town can hire him to help take care of the Schlemiel household, Mrs. Schlemiel and her children. While she goes to sell vegetables, since he looks so much like their father, they would feel comfortable with him being in their home and be able to take care of them. The elders thought, what a wonderful idea. You are definitely the wisest man around. Gronem said, okay, now we will pay you to take care of the family. Say, 3 groschen. Mrs. Schlemiel said, "Now, 3 groschen, that is certainly not enough to take care of a family. 6 would be much better." Groschen discussed it, and they resolved to pay him 5 groschen to take care of this family. Schlemiel moved in with the family and earned every day 5 groschen. His wife said, "Now, I think that you should be paying me some money for your stay here." He said, "I am not your husband, and therefore I do not have to give you money." Mrs. Schlemiel said, "Fine, then I do not have to cook for you, I do not have to darn your socks." From then on, Schlemiel paid, and she collected the money. This is the first time that she was able to collect money for the household. She mentioned to Schlemiel, "It's sad that you didn't go to Warsaw 10 years ago. I'd be a much wealthier woman." "Don't you miss your husband?" he said. "Well, don't you miss your wife?" Years and years went by, and the other Schlemiel never came back. They waited and waited. The townspeople were waiting. Some of the elders said maybe he fell off the end of the earth. Maybe he got eaten in the mountains. Maybe he lost his memory. There were different theories about what could have happened to Schlemiel. And Schlemiel, of course, was wondering what had happened to his real family in Helm 1. Were they all right? Was there a new Schlemiel there? He would like to travel again to find this out, but thought, no, I can't do that. He pondered what he could do. He decided that no matter where you travel, everywhere is the Schlemiel town, is a Helm town. People who live in Helm are certainly in Helm. All roads seem to lead to Helm. All the world is actually one Helm.
Oh, that was a beautiful story. Thank you so much for being with us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
residential and commercial sectors. Our New York State certified applicators offer guaranteed effective methods for all of your pest control needs. For results that you can count on, talk to the experts serving Rochester and all of Western New York since 1939.
Hi, Rolf. This is Kermit Frog, and this is one of my very favorite places. Hey, forests. You know, forests are home to lots of animals, and they give us food, and they keep our water and air clean. Unfortunately, these days our forests are in trouble. They're being threatened by development and people who don't treat them with respect. To find out what you can do to help, write to Forests, National Wildlife Federation, Washington, D.C. 20036. Remember, forests are more than trees.
This portion of paper is being brought to you by National Preferred Contractors, meeting America's needs the American way with honest, quality work.
Hello, welcome back again for more of our holiday special. I have here with me Simon Carmel. He has many talents. One of them is he's collected samples of culture and folklore of deaf folk since 1977. He's done this in an effort to preserve and do research on culture and folklore. He's recently written a book called The International Alphabet and Chart. Thank you very much for coming to perform here with us.
Now, I haven't made up these stories. I've collected them from a variety of deaf individuals and groups all over the United States. And I've selected a few of these stories to share with you. The first I'll be sharing is a joke entitled The Tree Joke. A lumberjack was walking through the forest, saw a large tree, and using his axe, cut 2 notches. He hollered, "Timber!" and the tree came crashing down. He then selected another tree. Again, cut it with his axe, hollered, "Timber!" and it came crashing down. At that point, he noticed an extremely large, tall tree and went to work on it, cutting notches in both sides. He hollered a mighty "Timber!" and it stood like a rock. Again he hollered, "Timber! Timber!" and it didn't budge. At that point, he called in a tree surgeon to find out what was going on. The tree surgeon, quite the expert, thoroughly examined the tree and informed him this tree is deaf. The lumberjack was a bit astounded and then thought what to do. Rolling up his sleeve, he finger-spelled Timber and watched as it crashed to the ground. Another tale I'd like to tell you is a very popular joke among deaf people. They love hearing this joke again and again. It's about a deaf driver and a hitchhiker and the police. A deaf driver was on a journey on a rather flat stretch of road and noticed a hitchhiker. So he pulled to the side and offered him a ride, explaining to the hitchhiker that he was himself deaf. The hearing hitchhiker had no problem with that at all, and off they went. Suddenly, a police car pulled them to the side for speeding. The officer walked up to the window asking for a driver's license and registration card. The driver explained he was deaf. Policeman said, "Oh, you can't hear it all." So he just mimed and gestured, "Well, slow down and be careful." The hitchhiker was just amazed that he'd gotten away with speeding like that. He said, "Oh, gee, being deaf must be wonderful." Well, the driver went along for a few more hours and began to tire. He pulled to the side and asked the hitchhiker to switch seats with him and drive for a while so that the driver could get in a nap. Well, the hitchhiker started driving, got back out on the road, and seeing no one around, figured he'd hit it. They really got moving along when suddenly another police car pulled up behind them, lights flashing, and pulled them over. The hitchhiker figured, "Oh, this'll be great. I'm going to fool him," pretending to be deaf. At which point the policeman signed back to him, "Oh, that's fine. My mother and father are deaf. What do you think you're doing here?" The driver was at a loss. Another story I'd like to share really happened. This actually happened in Canada. A woman shared her personal narrative with me about her experience in a restaurant. I love this story, and I'm sure you will too. One evening, this deaf woman and a group of her friends went to a restaurant where they were ordering pizza and pop and having a few drinks, sitting around having a good time, a nice social evening. They'd been at the restaurant for a couple of hours when all of a sudden they started to feel just a bit awkward. They noticed at an adjacent table, a group of hearing people were making fun of the way they were signing. The deaf people really didn't appreciate that at all, the way they were making fun of how they were signing and mocking them out. The woman thought it over a while and was trying to figure, how can I teach these folks a lesson? When she noticed, over in the corner of the room, a telephone booth. She warned all of her friends at the table, whatever I do, just act natural. Don't crack up, just relax. Well, about 15 minutes later, the woman got up from her seat, strolled over to the telephone booth, deposited a coin, dialed the phone, and started signing into the telephone receiver. Hey, how you doing? We're having a great time. You gonna come over and join us? And was standing there signing into this phone receiver. Well, we're looking forward to see you, and carried on a conversation for a while, then hung up the phone and strolled nonchalantly back to the table to rejoin the conversation. The hearing people at the next table were just dumbfounded. It's impossible, they thought, wondering what's going on here. Well, one of the worst offenders who was really making fun of the deaf people, walked by the woman, glanced at her, picked up the phone, and started to examine it. At which point, all of the deaf people just cracked up very loudly. The hearing man was so mortified he just got his friends and left the restaurant. I guess you really shouldn't make fun of deaf people or sign language. Something else that deaf people really love to watch is stories that are based on hand shapes from the alphabet from A to Z. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed your story, Simon. Please stay with us and we'll be right back with more later. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Hi, we're back for Hey Listen. Okay, now I have these three wonderful performers with me, and they were really outstanding. Patrick, Brenda, and Simon. To continue with the holiday spirit, I'd like to ask you what your favorite recollections are of holidays past, and I thought maybe you could share each of your individual memories with us. So, Pat, would you start?
Oh, there's many, but there's one special one. When I was maybe 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old, I wasn't sure if Santa Claus was for real. I sort of began to doubt this idea of Santa Claus. I thought about it, and my mother and father sort of noticed my doubting. And on Christmas Eve, they said, get ready, you have to get ready for church, for midnight mass. Everybody had to go to church. And they said, we heard somebody at the door. Go to the door, see who's at the door. So I went to the door, and there were all these boxes. So they brought them in. They said they were for me. I opened up the boxes, and there was a beautiful book, a church book. And I said, who is this from? They said, Santa Claus. Santa Claus? Well, maybe this is for real. Maybe there is a Santa Claus. And we all bustled off into church, and my father sat in the car. And I said, hey, Santa Claus was there. You missed him. Santa Claus was at home. And we went off to church. And a few days later, I figured it out. It was my father. He was at the front door. He ran out the back and went out to the front door. But that's really my best memory of Christmas.
Oh, thank you. And Brenda?
Yes, my best holiday memory was just recently. I had a roommate, and he was from England. He decided that he would go back home for the holidays, for Christmas. My roommate asked me if I'd like to join him to fly to England. I thought, well, why not? That'd be pretty exciting. Christmas is pretty boring for me because I'm Jewish and I celebrate holiday, but, you know, Christmas isn't special to me. So I decided to go to England with him. His family lived a few hours south of London. We got there for the holidays, and it was a really nice experience, their traditional way of having Christmas. Christmas Day, we went out riding. My roommate's sister was very skilled at horseback riding, you know, English style. We went around riding. She led me around because I didn't know where I was going, and she led me in this English riding style. I'm used to Western. They had the cute little hats and so forth. And the little button on the top and the boots. It was quite an enjoyable experience. When we got back home, we had Christmas dinner ready, and there were 4 different types of meats on the table. They had brisket, ham, lamb, and another type of meat. Before dinner began, they had a tradition of this particular ornament set at each table. It's called a cracker, and you pull it on either end, and it pops, and papers and toys come out of it. After the dinner was finished, we went and visited all the neighbors, and it was just a great fun time.
Oh, thank you. And Simon, how about you?
My favorite holiday was when I was a young boy. I really enjoyed the holiday of Hanukkah, the festival of lights, when you light the candles. And as we lit the first candle, the first night I got a gift from my mom. Lit the second candle, and I was surprised to get another gift. And we lit another candle the third night, the fourth night, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. And each day of Hanukkah, I'd get another gift. And that's why Hanukkah was my favorite holiday. I'd get gifts on 8 different days instead of all on one day like Christmas.
So you really made out pretty well then, I guess. So with Patrick, your favorite remembrance was when you found out that Santa Claus wasn't real. And Brenda, you enjoyed going to England one year. And Simon, you enjoyed your holiday memories. That's very interesting that you all have very different and special memories. I was wondering, Brenda, you've talked about another holiday memory you had when you went skiing?
Yes, yep. I guess that was about 4 years ago, maybe. I had the same problem. I did not know what to do for Christmas. I thought I'd go on a skiing trip. Many of my friends were going home with their families for the Christmas time. I went up to Canada for Christmas Day. There's a skiing resort up there, a mountain. There was a cute inn up at this particular skiing resort, and I went skiing. The snow was very wet and soft, and I really had fun. It fell down, and it was fine because it was so soft.
So who'd you go with?
I went with Jackie, of course.
Yeah. And I remember that it was bitter cold at that time.
Yes, it was very cold.
And remember, we also had some, let me see. We knew that we were warned by the tourism people that it was going to be very cold. You know, and they talked about hot shots. I was wondering if you drank hot alcohol to keep you warm. So I finally asked what a hot shot was. And actually, it turned out to be an insert in gloves and in boots in order to keep you warm while you were out skiing. And I remember those. Those are great.
Yes, and you take it out of the package and slap it and wrinkle it around. And I don't know what the chemicals are in there, but they get hot. And they should have sold them last weekend here in Rochester because it was so cold here.
Yeah, Patrick and Simon, I was wondering if you had any other particular memories that you'd like to share with us.
Well, of course, there's the holiday about my mother's cinnamon rolls. After church, midnight mass, we would go home and we'd all open up the gifts. We would not all open up the gifts at the same time. The youngest would open the first. The youngest would be responsible to distribute the gifts. And of course, everybody was really anxious and wanted the kid to hurry up. And we would have chocolate and cinnamon rolls. I'll be going home soon, and I just can't wait for that.
Oh, that's great. Please, I really enjoyed talking with you. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Thanks. Thank you so much for watching today. We had a wonderful show, and I'd like to thank Patrick, Brenda, and Simon for being with us. We really enjoyed having them share their holiday spirit with us. So please continue to watch Hey Listen for coming episodes, and have a happy holiday.